KSL Broadcast House. This is Sunday Edition with the Deseret News and KSL.
Good morning. Welcome to Sunday Edition. I'm Dave McCann. It's been a big week in Utah with President Trump's visit and the reduction of 2 national monuments. Also, Steve Bannon's character attack on Mitt Romney's also stirred things up. Joining us here at the table this morning to discuss it is Doug Wilks, the editor of the Deseret News, and Boyd Matheson, president of the Sutherland Institute. Good morning. Thank you both for being here.
Morning, Dave.
What did you, Doug, think of President Trump's visit?
You know, he got out of it exactly what he wanted to. In a 3-hour period, he comes to town, he decreases the size of the monuments, he stumps for Orrin Hatch, he wants him back in Washington. He also deals with his Mormon problem by meeting with members of the LDS Church. Right. And he makes a pitch for religious liberty, which resonates in Utah. So really, he got his message out and he did what he came here to do. So from his perspective, it was a very successful visit.
Boyd, some of the pictures that we see from him just up the road here at the Capitol, and now we're seeing the areas that have been reduced by his proclamation with Bears Ears and the Escalante Grand Staircase. What did you think of the visit?
Yeah, I think Doug's right on in terms of the president. That was probably as tightly scripted and as best executed event that has ever happened in the Trump administration. From the time they got off the plane to the time they took back off, carefully scripted. Trump stayed absolutely on message every step of the way. Spoke in very Utah terms. If you listen to his speech at the Capitol about the monuments, he was listening to the locals. It was about getting local control back in terms of public lands. And so I think he hit all the right notes, and he didn't have any crazy tweets and didn't have any things that were going to get people's hair on fire.
There were a couple of moments where he used the platform to endorse Orrin Hatch and all that he's done as far as moving forward. He was asked at one time if he supported him to run for re-election, and he said yes. I'm not sure what that means, but in the moment, it looked like a very good couple of hours for Orrin Hatch.
You know, it is. I mean, it's clear he wants Orrin Hatch there. He's a friend. He gets things done. He's leading the Senate. And if it's Mitt Romney or if it was to be Boyd or someone else, you know, he has to go to work again. He has to try and do something. But to me, it's kind of disappointing that Orrin Hatch will not say what he's going to do because he's effectively locking out other people through fundraising and everything else. And I'd love to see a primary with Orrin Hatch and Mitt Romney and all takers. Let the voters decide, you know, who they want back there.
Do you think, Boyd, this was, with the presidential visit, the start of the last hurrah grand exit? Or do you think he can ramp back up and go for 6 more years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very difficult for Senator Hatch to go 6 more years. Yeah. I think he will take the win. If they can get tax reform across the line, he can take a victory lap on some of the public lands issues. And I think that's where it ends up ending. Because the one thing that I don't think will change, despite the presidential visit and the kind words from the president, I still think a poll will come out in the next week that will show 78% of Utahns still want the senator to retire. Right. If there was any real polling in terms of a head-to-head between he and Mitt Romney, I think that would be very clear that it would be a Mitt Romney landslide. And so I think in the end, the Hatch camp will reluctantly say, okay, we'll spike the ball, call it good, and end it there.
All right, quickly on these public lands, how many years down the road will it actually be resolved that Bears Ears is reduced, along with the park in Escalante, once we get through all the courts?
Well, you have 5 court cases right now, and you're looking at, you know, at least, 2-3 years to get those resolved. Something that's really interesting, I think that's lost on this, though, is it was announced this week that Zion had a record number of people, 4.4 million people through November at Zion National Park alone. And everyone's interested in protecting these lands, but when you become a national park, thousands, millions of people visit there. Right. If it's a monument, there's a few less. If it stays BLM land, federal land, which Utah has, then fewer go. And if it's a conservation area, fewer people go. So all this effort to try and put a designation on it without any controls really make it very, very difficult. It's really the management plan that we should be focusing on.
Yeah, that's right. And that's often where you end up with the uncertainty for the local folks, because they just have these swings where one president can do it, the other can undo it. But the bigger issue is it was federal land before it was designated, it was federal land when it was designated, and it's federal land still today. Right. And so it's the management plan, like Doug was talking about, that are really the key thing we should be looking at and pushing for moving forward.
Let's finish up with Steve Bannon. Now, he talked to you to try to get you to join the race. But this week, Steve Bannon goes on the attack, attacks Mitt Romney, attacks the LDS Church for the most part, attacks missionary service, comparing it to something you just do on the side. Where is he coming from?
A clear misunderstanding of Utah politics and Utahns in general. It was a purely political play for sure for Steve Bannon, but that's the very thing that people are exhausted by. You can disagree with Mitt Romney on how he ran his campaign or what his policy agenda is, but he has been the one person in this country who has been absolutely solid, certain, immovable on things like morality and fidelity and human decency. Yeah. And I think Steve Bannon took a major miscalculation, a big swing at Mitt, and I think he missed badly.
Doug, if Mitt runs and wins, he goes charging back there with a boatload of momentum. I don't know if Steve Bannon and his group have any idea what would be coming with the characterization that Boyd just made of Mitt Romney.
Well, let's see what happens with Roy Moore in that election. Yeah. And this will be key to the Republican Party, and Boyd knows more about that dynamic. But Mitt Romney certainly can be a statesman. He can come back and be a voice of authority. He's been consistent in his criticism of Donald Trump, but also in his support of Trump as it relates to serving the country.
Policy. Yeah, and on policy as well. And I think that's the other thing that's real critical is if Mitt Romney, the only reason for Mitt Romney to go back to the Senate is to treat it like a Bain Capital turnaround. Yeah. Leadership is the problem in the Senate, and he certainly could bring that to the table. And it would be very fascinating to have Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, possibly having a greater influence on the American agenda than if they were at the other end in the Oval Office.
It's going to be very interesting next year. Boy, Doug, thank you both for being here this morning.
Thanks, Dave.
It was the